Hello, and welcome to the I don't know, I don't know what episode podcast this is. I'm your host, Justin Huan, who has currently no concept of time right now, and during this time of quarantine, David Suarez is thankfully available.
How long have we been on this rock? 5 weeks, 2 days. Where's COVID?
It doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter. All that matters is this. Okay, that's all that matters. Again, welcome to
The contact of the mother shark to the child shark actually spread COVID faster.
yes, indeed. As as if you haven't heard already, we are currently living in the pandemic of our time. So basically, what we have for you today is Mr. Suarez here has not given the two viewers, the two of you, his like top 10 and his bottom 5 and talked about the recap of 2019 because if you've noticed movies aren't coming out anymore. So this is not as irrelevant as we originally thought. So uh how are you? How are you, David? How's quarantine going for you?
Quarantine's okay. I haven't been able to see as many movies via Amazon as I would have liked to, but that is all right. Uh, I really don't. I kid you not. I can't tell if time is going really, really fast or really, really slow.
Mm. Yeah, I've been in quarantine. I've been working from home for like approaching 2 weeks, and it's like bad. Like I'm like it goes by pretty fast, so that's a good thing and a bad
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Um,
It depends on what you're working towards.
mhm.
Since spring break just started, for me, I was like, man, can't wait to have a nice long spring break, and then and then it's like, oh wait, I kid you not, the moment that my spring break started is when Ohio went into its government sanctioned lockdown, so
Mm,
that anybody who's out on the road after a
mhm,
certain time, who doesn't have a reason to be a part of important economic or functional business,
mhm.
they get like pulled over by the cops and they get asked like, what is your job? Where do you work? Why are you out on the road? It feels like something out of a movie, actually, to be
Yeah,
in a weird state of government sanctioned lockdown.
yeah. Well, here in an undisclosed state, my actually I'll say in Rhode Island. So my brother he went out to the high school track expecting no one to be there as he's taking out his run.
Mm.
And lo and behold, there are multiple cars there, in which he looks down into the football field and sees a bunch of like 10 to 20, 16 to 17-year-olds playing tag in sports and close contact sports.
Huh. Wow. Interesting. In Ohio, if that happened, Ohio is my location. That group of people would have been pulled over by the cops really fast.
Yeah, this is
Also,
a
furthermore, who the heck still does that in a pandemic? Like,
well in other news, similar stupidity. In Florida, the governor of Florida decided to not shut down the beaches, in which the local so here's the thing, the local towns and cities, some of them were smart enough for like, well, if he ain't gonna close it, I guess we'll close it. But some of them remain open, and a bunch of spring breakers, um
oh boy.
they went, and to no one's surprise, some of them got COVID.
What? In a close contact area with extremely exposed skin, like a beach
Mhm.
area? Really? Wow, what are the chances?
And one last moment of stupidity. So Liberty University, that the wonderful what do you call it, higher institution of learning.
Hmm.
Um, they're their president Jerry Farwell, even though they did switch to online classes as everyone should, and everyone is, he's quote unquote welcoming back students back to campus and holding face-to-face office hours.
What's the reasoning behind this little character doing that?
It's Jerry Farwell. I mean,
you know what? Never mind you.
That's all you need to know.
Fair enough.
Okay, no. Okay, one more. Last piece of stupidity. So there's a wonderful, completely objective news network called Fox.
Huh.
And because they're truly fair and balanced, as their slogan dictates.
If the slogan says so, it has to be true.
Mm-hmm. So one of their most objective personalities, by the name of Tucker Carlson.
I was drinking tea. Don't do that.
He had someone on, and it was this guy who was going absolutely crazy, who basically said, "Look, we need to reopen the economy, and grandparents are willing to die for their children to reopen the economy." And Tucker Carlson, of all people, was like, "Huh?" So, well, if Tucker Carlson goes, "Huh?" then
there might be something up.
You know. Yeah, it's a crazy world out there. It's crazy.
Not much more than usual, but the way that it's being seen is kind of out in the open now, which is interesting.
Mm-hmm. But anyways, in a more movie news section, we're going to talk about how, well, as anyone can see, you cannot go to a movie theater today.
Yeah.
Because the CDC has basically barred gatherings of more than 20 people for the next 1.5 months, to no surprise. But so one of the things with the problem with COVID is that there's a lot of industries that are getting hit hard because people cannot gather. One of them is the movie industry, as I said, which is going to be one of 50 industries lined up for a congressional bailout in the next 5 months. But there's someone, one of your favorite filmmakers, David, by the name of Christopher Nolan.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. He wrote an article and an op-ed in the Washington Post. I almost said the Washington Times. I was like, that's actually a fake of like a fictional newspaper in House of Cards. Anyways,
really,
yes,
funny.
Anyways, backing up from that, he basically wrote a very heartfelt article, which is pretty interesting because most of the movies aren't that heartfelt. But he wrote a very nice article, basically why we need movies as a society.
You know what? I could not agree more with that. I mean, can you link me to that article?
I will send you said article, but I will just currently summarize very quickly what he said. And so here you go, my friend. Basically, he said that, especially in the time, after, a crisis, when we get through the crisis, which we will get through the crisis, the need for us as humans to basically bond and laugh and cry together is more important, and movies can offer that, as a community, not just, watching Netflix and watching, Amazon Prime and Hulu, which is all good and everything, but there's something about a community, as a human community watching films together. Yeah. I will read a quote from it, which quote, "When the crisis passes, the need for collective human engagement, the need to live and love and laugh and cry together will be more powerful than ever. The combination of the pent-up demand and the promise of new movies could boost local economies and contribute billions to our national economy. We don't just owe it to the 150,000 workers of this great American industry to include them in those we help. We owe it to ourselves. We need what movies can offer us."
I could not agree more. And something about Christopher Nolan that I've always respected is his interesting ability, which I guess I'm experiencing time in a weird way now. But his interesting way to deal with time, and not just time, but the association of time and things to come, right? He has a pretty good understanding that along with time, there are things that are just going to happen. You know, as this, as we have this time, this period of disease, a pandemic, which is an interesting thing for me to be able to say and for that to be completely accurate and truthful. Um, he also fully recognizes the fact that when it passes, there will be a skyrocket and a need. I think people are slowly becoming more and more um, aware of their need for social interaction in some way, shape, or form. And it's really interesting to see people getting pushed that way. I do want to see independent movie makers, you know, like more indie people, because I feel bad. Indie theaters will be hit hard, but
Mhm.
when everything passes, I do want to see all of the new ideas, new perspectives that people will have after the pandemic, because it'll be an interesting experiment and experience to see how this will affect movie production in the sense of like writing, movie writing
Mm,
worldwide, right?
yeah.
Surely, even if Contagion came out a little bit ago, uh, we'll have far more movies talking about social isolation, uh, the dangers of pandemic, the dangers of panic leading to pandemic, and uh, and the nature of control for a government versus
Mm,
freedom by people.
yeah. But yeah, you're correct because the old saying, art imitates life and life imitates art. So we'll see. Like post 9/11, you had a ton of, you know, all your action movies were coming from a post 9/11 mindset of, there's people out there that are coming to take away our freedom. And also then it led to during the Iraq war later when you're like the government is causing some of these issues. So there's a lot of things that might come out of the social isolation, as you said. Um, it'll be interesting, but also Hollywood likes to milk things to death. So
Mm.
we'll see what they milk to death and what they don't. But going back to the one of your points about socialization, like as a society would love to have human interaction. Like I'm sure you and I can just list like a lot of like moments where like going to the movies with like a crowd or with friends is like some of the best moments ever. Like for me, that would be like going and watching like Avengers Endgame, watching Guardians of the Galaxy for the first time
Yes.
with a full crowd. Like these things that I am missing so much, or just going with friends, going with you, going with some other people. Well, what was your? I'll ask you this: what's like one of your first moments when you think about like the best movie going experience for you?
Uh, the minor spoiler for my top 10 movie list, but when it comes to best experiences, two things pop into mind. Um, One actually was the movie Get Out, which is interesting, by Jordan Peele for any of you who realize he's making more stuff in the coming years. But yeah, I think Get Out was interesting. Number one, it was on my birthday that it was released a little while back, or at least that it was available for me on my schedule to watch. And then when I went out there to see it, the whole entire crowd was packed,
Mm,
which I was not used to being a part of a packed crowd in a theater. Actually, really ever. Most of the time, I would go to theaters when not many people were there on weekends. So that was like a big experience for me, and it was like a massive theater. It was IMAX or not IMAX. Maybe it was just the other theater, but I don't know. That's like number one for me. And then the audience was very visceral in their reactions, right? Uh, uh, Sometimes against the desire and intent of the movie, but that's okay. Like they're like, "Oh, I didn't trust her at all," and I'm like, "Me neither." Which there's a very nice, wonderful, powerful reaction when you're with a crowd watching a movie. After watching Get Out, afterwards, I really enjoyed it and I got to analyze it. Still one of my top favorites, but the experience is very rare. Number two is Avengers Endgame, because I was in Ohio with some friends. I was back home at the time, not in college anymore. And I got to see it. I had to drive like 3 hours to go to a really nice theater to see it. And it was packed. It's interesting. Not so much being a part of a crowd, for the opposite reason, actually, of Get Out, where everybody was very visceral and loud. For Endgame, there were like a few powerful moments of loudness. But what I really liked about Endgame is there's moments that have two things. Bursting like crowd, everybody pops off their chairs, clapping and stuff. And then like 3 seconds later, the movie does something. Or like it was like 3 seconds later, and everybody just got silent.
Mm.
And I've never experienced silence with a crowd before. So that was really interesting, you know. So those two movies really stuck out to me, and I just feel so bad because I love going to theaters with friends, specifically with you. Whenever we would go to the wonderful art theater, which is turning 82, isn't that wild?
Yeah,
that's something. And I just feel so bad because I enjoyed you showed me some of my first art films ever in that theater, and so I don't know. It's so sad to not be able to enjoy that community feeling, even if it's just two of us or three of us.
So I'm gonna divulge something, just a little bit of our friendship between David and I. But the last 2 years for your birthday, I've always gotten you like movie related gifts. But every time something happens.
Oh, but I feel so bad.
Last year I got him Cinemia, which was literally right out, like going out the door when I got you that. He only used that thing once. And then this year was like, I got you a gift card from our local cinema, which thankfully does not expire, so it's still fine. But it's like literally like right after, it's like, oh, can't use it like now, so.
It really is some rough timing, isn't it?
I guess whenever I get you, something's gonna happen. So maybe I should be a little bit more considerate.
But tell you what, though, I mean, I fully love those gifts. You're wonderful, and I was able to use that Cinemia 1.5 times, so don't even you worry about that. It was still good. Perhaps it's more so when you buy me a gift, then the world changes. It's like code. So maybe it just kind of causes little shifts.
I'm responsible.
No, not the act of you giving it, the act of me receiving it. Somehow there's
you have to reject it.
I have to say no. I have to fight against the dying of the light.
So I guess we'll transition because we have a bunch of very prestigious podcast awards that we have to give out. That clearly there are people lining up and emailing us and calling us and texting us that they want these awards. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna see how far we can take this for the next let's say half an hour or less, and basically we'll just take turns in like saying what comes to our mind, basically. Okay, so we've alluded to best movie go experience, which for both of us would be Avengers Endgame.
Yes.
And we've elaborated on that, so we're not gonna go to that. But I thought of actually something interesting that that you kind of talked about. What movie made you cry the most?
Oh, that is actually one of my awards here. Okay, I called it the jerk of a tearjerker award because I get angry I get angry whenever a movie can make me cry, so I called it jerk. But okay, this is actually really interesting. The movie that made me cry the most was actually The Farewell. Because going through all of the movies on my list and some of the honorable mentions, the only one that actually made me like cry in a more visceral way was The Farewell. Dang, that was a good movie. Yeah, that was the jerk of a tearjerker award.
Mm. So it's actually interesting. So when I saw it in New York, when like I saw it earlier than all you common folks know. But that was one of the moments where you talk about collective experience that no one like did not cry at the end of that movie. Everyone was crying at the end, except for me because I'm heartless apparently in that situation. It is if some of you who follow the last episodes, you know what I think about that movie. But in terms of actual emotions, I did not cry. So I'm heartless. I'm sorry, but everyone else would cry. It's one of those movies. It's that and like Inside Out, where like a certain scene where like there is no dry tear in the theater,
Yeah.
and that's such a very beautiful thing. But for me, I'm gonna actually say I actually have to slightly think of this, but I would say for me that that the award would go to a movie called Little Women.
I didn't get to see that. You did speak very well of that.
It's one of those movies where I'm not gonna say it, but let's just say tragedy strikes.
Mm-hmm.
And when tragedy strikes, you know so well because the movie is set up that it's really good at mirroring the past and the present.
Hmm.
So, not gonna spoil too much into it, but basically, the women set up so it's like you have your A plot of the past and B plot of the present, but they're going in a straight line, like constant distance from each other, in which certain plot points happen again in both timelines.
Oh.
And then when you get to a part when you're like, I know exactly what's happening, but when it happens, you're just like, at least for me, I was like, no.
Wow.
It's like when it's so obvious, but it still hurts because that movie you're so invested in the characters is acted so well. Like everyone is acting like to the best of their ability that you just can't help investing in them as people. And
Mm-hmm.
that's like I hate the fact that it's outside my top 10. But anyway,
Yeah.
uh so let's go to one that is my favorite. What's the best movie we never saw?
Okay, that's actually really funny. Yeah, I actually did have an idea for an award for the Invisible Genius for any movie that I really wanted to see but didn't get to see.
Mm.
And I have to throw this one because I'm really upset I didn't see this. Uh no. I don't I think I'll have to throw it to Uncut Gems because it's a movie that I really wanted to watch. Like with all of my heart, I'm like, wow, are you saying there's an interesting kind of well-made Adam Sandler movie with a very different take on like just comedy, but an interesting story drama thing? I'd have to say that's probably it for me. I mean, I really wanted to, and I just never got the chance to, for random reasons. Well, that and One Child Nation. Very
Mm.
again, very different films, but for also very different reasons. I really wanted
Yes.
to see both of them.
Yes, the documentary about the one child policy in
Mhm.
China, which you will get to. Don't worry, COVID ain't going away. so,
That's true. That's true.
uh, so, but for me, I took this very ironic, like in an ironic sense.
Oh, okay, cool.
So for me, it's obviously the Terminator movie, Terminator Dark Fate.
Yes, yes.
Come on,
I'll
Arnold coming back again,
wait.
again.
I, I
He's
love
back
I love
again.
I love when she says, "I'll be back." I was like, they fly now. It's the same. Sorry, everybody. That was a reference to the rise of some random girl I can't remember. Star Wars movie,
The
and
rise and fall of a fandom. Anyway.
for a lot of money.
Mhm,
Uh, but yes, that movie does look ridiculous.
mhm. Yeah, it's it's like I still haven't seen it. My dad's probably gonna love it because he loves these very overly simplistic movies
Cool.
that are also. weirdly convoluted at the same time. But yeah, that's me. Midway came very close. This very close. Since I
Mm.
could, uh, but okay. Well, okay. Your turn, David.
Yes, yes. Okay. Well, here's some fun ones. I have an award that I just say that's just like three sets of ellipses, just
Hmm.
because it's kind of the amount of silence I needed after seeing this movie. What's a movie that really just kind of left you speechless after you saw it? And then I could say what mine was.
Yeah, go. Yeah, go for it.
Oh, okay, there we go. So I saw this interesting movie, kind of niche art film. There's only one other person in the theater when I saw it. It was called Cats, and when I
You know what? That was so obvious. I should have.
right.
I should have known.
I just the reason I said ellipses and I said that the movie left me with a long pause at the end was for the sake of the pun. Anyways, yes, Cats. So this movie was vile. It was putrid. I think it inspires and incites violence in the people who see it, probably. Uh, like from this movie springs some odd sense of discomfort, evil, and perhaps eating of cockroaches. I'm still not sure. So yeah,
But
it's a terrifying movie. I was left
and
speechless.
whatever Rebel Wilson was wearing under her.
Oh God. I mean, they just didn't have to. I mean, there's it's interesting. Usually, I say when I see a movie, I'm like, this scene's kind of predictable. They didn't have to tell us this. I feel like this whole movie they didn't have to tell me. Just because the story didn't have to be told, as in it should not have been for the good of humanity. But after seeing it, I'll say this: it's not my least favorite film of 2019 because it's hard for me to accept this as a coherent film plot, and at the same time, I still enjoy it enough to call it a film. So it's that it left me with pause.
Okay. I think okay, now it narrows down to two movies that could be your final one, but I will save those thoughts.
Hmm.
Uh for me actually, that would be yes, Cats is very much applicable in that case. But for me, I will um, give the movie that is called Dark Waters, starring Mark Ruffalo.
Oh, you did talk about this.
Yeah,
Oh.
and one of the things is actually okay. There's another one, but I'll talk about this one. It's the fact that uh, Dark Waters. It talks about how basically DuPont, the chemical company, basically killed us all or is slowly killing us all.
Mm.
And the way its structure itself is it's slow when you think there's a moment of triumph, but reflecting real life, like even after triumph, things seem to regress.
Oh.
So after the movie, you start thinking about it and you realize, A, we're all effed.
Yeah.
Uh, B, uh, there are people out there that are okay with this, that profit off of human suffering, or without any thinking of consequence for human suffering. Which leads to the other movie that also fits into this, which we talked about recently, One Child Nation.
Mm.
And you, as I've told you this
Yeah.
before off camera, it's just like you really think you know about the one child policy. You're like, oh, it's just population control. It's like, no, it involves people doing horrendous things to other people justifying these policies that end up stripping babies from mothers' wombs, that bulldoze communities, that bulldoze houses, where we have like fetuses just lying in trash cans and dumpsters. And I viscerally remember watching it with my college roommates, going out the theater and just literally screaming, we live in a world in which this exists. Like I couldn't shake it off. I just couldn't shake it off for like a day. It was, yeah. So again, yeah, that's for me.
When
Very
I see
different.
that, Yeah, for sure.
Very different answers. Very different.
I guarantee you, when I do see that movie, I know I'm gonna be I'm gonna be very lost for words.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, call me if you need some therapy, because I know I did after watching that movie. Yeah,
definitely.
go for
Oh yes,
go for
yes.
another one.
The most expensive garbage award. I have some very angry awards I've given out for
Oh, the
this.
most expensive garbage award. Are you and I thinking of the
Yes,
same?
yes.
All right, 3, 2, 1.
Rise
Rise
of
of
Skywalker.
Skywalker.
There we
Yeah,
go. Thank you.
okay.
Thank you. It's like if you got it's as if you took something that was maybe nice at first, and then you kind of just mixed the order all around in the incorrect way, and then you just kind of like randomly threw in stuff for like 5 seconds that didn't have to be there, and then you retcon in your own movie things 5 seconds later, right? And then you retcon a movie before it's the
And
movie.
then you retcon the movie by making a novel, by writing a novel that contradicts everything in the
Exactly.
actual movie.
This movie is like a weird phantom or a ghost. You can't get away from it because as time goes on, you find out more and more that just makes it worse and worse.
So I've made this comparison to a friend, and which this friend questioned my sanity or my personal and private life after this. So, if for those of you that don't know, the novelization literally just came out like a week
Ugh.
ago, which retconned a lot of things, including the fact that, well, you can go read about it. It's all over. But I basically said this: Rise of Skywalker is like, your friend that tried to, smuggle like coke.
Yeah.
But then, so he comes to you, it's like, I just smuggle coke. Okay, don't explain to me. And then the novel is the attempt by your friend to try to explain himself. His or her. Be like, this is why I did it. Like, we don't, okay, I've accepted that you did it. You don't need to tell me. I don't need to know what went on in your head. I want to move on from this.
and they're slightly high while they're explaining it to you.
Oh, very much so.
Exactly.
Very,
Right.
very, very much so. Speaking of insanity, I'll throw in one of my awards. This is the movie you should definitely see while you're in quarantine.
Yes, yes. Yeah, I do have the Love of Lockdown award as well.
Okay. Are you and I on the same page about this?
It's kind of rough for me because I actually was locked for a couple of different movies for this one.
All right,
Um,
you tell
actually,
me. Yeah.
okay, I'll say the one that's like for slightly funny, but also for real. It's The Irishman.
Hmm.
Because I'm gonna be in this house for so long that I'm like, why not choose a long movie? you know? Um,
This is true. This is
yeah.
very valid.
For the sake of functionality, I think that's a pretty good one. I don't know though if I would watch it a second time because of how long it is. But that's different. And then another one I really recommend if you're in lockdown. I don't know. I'd probably have to say like The Lighthouse because it's right.
That was mine.
Yeah, yours. Well, what was your reasoning besides, well, the plot? But
But well, it fits literally with
mm,
being in quarantine because you're stuck in a lighthouse in a closed space in
yeah,
which, and if you want to go even more insane, this is the perfect movie to question your own sanity. The movie questions its own sanity the
it does.
entire time. Um, but going back to your point about The Irishman, uh, I actually rewatched The Irishman, like part of it, like a month or two ago. Like I just started watching casually and got to the last like 15 minutes and then like just forgot about it. And it's been sitting in my Netflix queue where you like resume watching and it's just like The Irishman is just sitting there. And like I do want to get back to it. I think it's like we talked about this like 2 or 3 episodes ago. Like it's a really good movie and I appreciate it. The more I think about it, the more I also appreciate it.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so I completely get you. And also one other thing, the Babylon Bee released a wonderful article where it said the CDC recommends you that you binge watched the Lord of the Rings trilogy during this time.
That's genius. That would actually last quite a long time
Yeah.
of the quarantine.
Which goes into definitely into your point about functionality.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let me see. Let's go for another one. What is the most forgettable movie?
Oh, I forget. No, I think I I think the most forgettable movie, and it is in my very far lower in my honorable mentions. I hate saying this. So I don't want to say that, but I will. The oddly enough, the Klaus, the animated movie, is one that I love, and yet I can't and then it's weird, like the moment that it appears in my head, it's perfect. But whenever I think about it outside of it, I just forget about it. Which is so funny because um I'm a big animation fan, and this movie has some of the best animation ever. So it's not because of the quality of the movie, it's just the fact that I only got to see it one time, and then I never got to see it again. So it's which is too bad because I'm actually a big animation fan, and it's one of the most technically impressive movies. It actually got my technical award for like most interesting visual aesthetic. Uh, and then in a weird way, also something I had to add onto my list because I actually almost forgot about it
There you go.
Was the Nightingale, which is weird because I like the movie a lot, but I just didn't think about it when I was making my list.
Mm.
Just because the history story of it is something that didn't stick out to me in comparison to all the other history movies and cool movies I saw this year.
Which I will throw your own words against you, because I
Yes.
remember after we saw The Nightingale, you said initially off the top of your head after the movie that this was the best movie you saw that year.
Yes, I remember that, and I remember that because it had some of the most interesting visual. Actually, that's weird. Between The Nightingale and Klaus, there are two movies that I extremely enjoy and find to be very artistically significant. And yet for some reason, outside of the like compared to all the other movies, something about them just kind of like float. It's not at the forefront of my mind.
I'm gonna have the fact that you've said Klaus pains me to a very high degree, but
Really?
we will have to agree to disagree.
Wow.
But for me, I think what defines forgettable is mediocrity.
Oh.
And there are two movies that define it, and these are two biopic movies that are not necessarily terrible, but it was such a pain to get through. And once I finished, it completely escaped my mind. And the two movies that follow are the movies Judy and Tolkien.
Huh.
Yeah.
I stay away from bio picks or something like that. So I actually didn't hear about Tolkien. Judy, I heard about from you, but
Tolkien came out like really early last year, but I was like,
um,
oh, this is gonna be J.R.R. Tolkien, one of my favorite authors, and they're like one of my favorite movies came from his works, and I watched it, and it's informative because you get to see his young years, like
mm,
in college and in World War I, but it you can't help but just feeling that it's so bland in its telling. And same thing with Judy. It's so bland in its telling that you literally could just save your time and just go on Wikipedia.
mm,
That's how like bland it was. Like I'm not saying it's like terrible by any stretch of the imagination. It's just very there's nothing about it that's unforgettable. There's nothing about it that sticks out like any visuals. Actually, Tolkien, there's one part that really annoys me now I think about it, where they literally try to visualize like the Lord of the Rings, where he's in the trenches and he sees like all the smoke, and then the smoke turns into the Nazgul, and I'm like, okay. Like initially, I was like, "Oh, that's cool," and then the more I thought about, it, I'm like,
Mm,
anyways, that's how like for me, mediocrity is very forgettable.
that's fair. Usually I hate movies that are mediocre, and so I dwell on them too much, and so it's hard for me to forget. But honestly, that's pretty fair.
Just pure, like I'm talking about just pure mediocrity, not like
Yeah.
I would say like Rise of Skywalker is like bad mediocrity, like it's tipping like
Uh,
bad, but just like straight down the middle mediocrity. It's like it's not bad that I'm gonna remember, but it's not good enough that I'm also gonna remember about it.
you know what? That's fair. I can understand that. Uh, I didn't
Uh,
see that many mediocre films this year, but yeah, fair enough.
because I'm a good friend.
That's right. You separated separated me from the pathetic average, which you know I hate more than anything.
All right, give me a couple more, and then we'll
Yes.
transition last. I'll finish it off with a specific category. So,
Perfect. Well, I had this is a really interesting movie experience based award, but it's the second time through not as fun award.
that is a very oh no, oh no.
Yeah. Well, no,
Oh wait,
uh,
are you? I think I know what you're gonna say. I think I know what you're gonna say.
I don't want to hurt your feelings when I
You're
say
gonna
this.
hurt my feelings so
I am
much.
going to hurt your
It's
feelings.
one of two movies.
It
I'm sure
is.
it's one of two movies or
Yeah.
both.
Okay. I mean, I'll just.
Just put out my misery now. Just put out
Okay.
my misery.
So, Last Black Man in San Francisco was just a little. I'm sorry. I know. No, my. Mind you, it's still in my top 10. Actually, still pretty high in my top 10. But it's just. It. At first, I called this the Somnambulist Award because I fell asleep 2 times the second time through, despite having coffee, just because I didn't realize how much slower the first half of the movie is. The second half, when I woke back up and saw the second half, then I was like, oh wow, it's picking back up to what it's all leading to, right? Um, Not necessarily a mark of bad timing or pacing, I mean, but rather just the movie has very distinct pacing. It has a slow build up into a very rapid accumulation of events towards the end, which is satisfying. But if you're not prepared for how long that wait is at the beginning, then it's like, wow, this is taking a bit longer than I remember. So yeah, realistically, it's not so much an enjoyment thing as much as it is a lot slower of a grind, I guess.
Mm-hmm. I've talked to one of my coworkers who said that for a movie that you adore.
Okay.
So, which is by the movie of Parasite, and I'm like, okay.
In a weird way, I kind of get that too, though. My third time through Parasite, that's it took like 3 or 4 times until I felt that for Parasite. Um, so I think that's like a good marker. How many times do you have to watch a movie before you're like, okay, I'm starting to see a lot more of the errors in how I perceive it mentally, or how I think about it mentally, and how it actually is when I experience it?
For me, that would have to go to Jojo Rabbit.
Yeah.
Mostly because I was watching with a good friend of ours by the name of Michelle, like
Yeah.
who already graduated, if you remember. But she loved it the second time. But I was also really tired, so it didn't help. But also, I wasn't with you when you and Alex were cackling. Like you two were cackling, and like it was so infectious that I cackled along with you. And I'm not gonna have that again, man. Like,
I'm sorry, but
so it's still like it's still like a really good movie, but like for that, I would say it dropped out of my top 10. But before we get to your final award you want to throw out, I'm gonna siphon off of your award. What was the movie that was just as good or got better after a second time?
Nice. Yeah, okay. I like that. Yeah, so I was thinking about this as well. I was trying to think about the festering award. Like a good festering though, something you kind of have to sit on a bit to really be like, you know what, this was better than I remember. And for me, that actually ended up being this is kind of interesting. That ended up being Knives Out for me, which
Mm.
is interesting because I really enjoyed Knives Out when I first saw it. Despite like my initial thoughts on the trailer, like what, a year ago, however long I thought about the trailer. Because
I suspect foul play.
ting, with a little piano, ting. Uh, he's so funny. He's so good. Going through Knives Out again, I was just so surprised at how much more I enjoyed it. Because at first I was like, this was a pretty fun, enjoyable movie. Second time through, though, really thinking about it, there was really good timing, very funny delivery for a lot of simple lines. There was a lot of little things that I didn't even catch, the first time around for the sake of the fun murder mystery. I respected the movie more because it did something most murder mysteries don't do, and it divided it so that it goes through the murder mystery plot like halfway through the movie in a way.
I think I would say the first like 20
Or the
minutes.
first, yeah, actually, even earlier. That's right. It goes through that whole very rapid plot very quickly, and then it kind of works backwards and forwards from that,
Yeah.
which I really respected a lot more the second time through when I could process it. So that actually improved greatly my placement of Knives Out because I was like, wow, this was a really well. It wasn't just an enjoyable movie; it was a well-made movie, and I respected that a lot.
Mhm. Yeah. That's a good choice. For me, I think there's two categories. Like there's like basically I have three movies, but I can separate into like two reasons.
Mhm.
So one section is basically Last Black Man San Francisco and The Farewell. Because as I told you before, when I saw those movies at the first time for both movies, I was like a little underwhelmed. I was like, oh, so that's it. But the more I thought about it, it's like what does the director want to say? It's actually interesting because I just watched The Last Black Man San Francisco yesterday with my family. I finally dragged them to
Oh,
watch it.
nice.
And they were like, wow, this is like really depressing. And I was like, which is true. But I was talking to my brother and he was like basically he was like, that's it. Like, so this person, like this, I'm going to try to be dance around the edges. This person's purpose didn't matter.
Yeah.
And I said that's the point. And like thinking about like those things for both The Farewell and Last Black Man in San Francisco, in which both cases they're all about like real, genuine, raw stories and just telling them with all the raw emotion that
Hmm.
it carries. And watching them both the second time through that lens, I loved both of those movies. Like even more the second time. Just the more I think about, the more I loved it. And the other movie was Avengers Endgame because I watched
Yeah.
both movies. No, sorry, I watched Avengers Endgame within the span of like 48 to 72 hours twice. So like, so I'll give you the timeline. I probably told you this. So I watch it Friday with your boy Peter. My
Yes.
brother watches it Saturday with his friends, and then both of us go, "Hey mom, hey dad, you guys want you guys want to watch it?" And like, so on Sunday, the both of us go with our parents to watch it, and both of us like my parents loved it. I loved it just as much. My brothers like just as much, and I told one of our friends says how many times are gonna watch it, and I said um, as many times as I don't as I sorry as long as I cry as much as the previous showing.
Yeah.
I was bawling both
Yeah.
times. So yeah, that's mine.
Mhm.
Your last category.
Okay. All right. So, I already talked about my most technical awards slightly before with Klaus. But my true final category would have to be, and this is interesting. Um, I want to know how I say this. What for you would fall into the category of the most significant film award? And I say that without giving any more context to the word significant because I just want to see what movie you found to be most significant.
I was about to say go woke or go broke.
Heck yeah, dude.
I'm kidding.
I knew it.
Significance. Okay, so the way I'm gonna take this is, what is most significant to the film industry?
Okay, nice.
And I'm gonna say, okay, so one movie came out in which that film, there's a big impact on film that we're gonna look back in 2020 and we're gonna like, this movie changed the trajectory of Hollywood or added something new to Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
And you can go it through multiple ways. You can go through cultural representation. We can talk about Asian American representation. We can talk about The Farewell. We can talk about Parasite. We can talk about the culmination of a series of movies. We can talk about, Avengers. I guess, we could also, this is tough.
I know,
tough.
right?
There's so many very significant movies. I am going to have to go. I'm gonna have to go with Parasite.
Okay, different from mine. What was your reasoning for saying it's the most significant in its effect on Hollywood, besides the fact that it swept awards across?
So this is partially my hope more than I think, is the fact that we're finally gonna have a Western audience basically can be more open to foreign or international films, basically. And if you know Bong Joon-ho's very famous quote during the Golden Globes, where he said, "Once you overcome the 1-inch barrier of subtitles, you're exposed to many more great films." And I think in my own viewing of films, I've definitely been going out of my way more to see foreign films. I've seen 3 of the 5 like Academy Award, best international film. Like when I go to indie theaters, I'm like, oh, it's a foreign film, or it's a non-English film. Cool, I want to go see it.
Nice.
This is probably interesting, right? So, I guess for me personally, but also for my hope that maybe we'll see a more diverse set of films that's not just Hollywood based.
Good. Yeah. I mean, I was figuring that you would have something. When I said significant, I figured you would have something about the cinematic world at large. So I was really happy to see that you actually did end up doing that. That was good. Awesome. I was kind of split in 2 for significant. I had the most significant effect on my perception of movies and the ways that a movie can be told and shown, and cultural and historical significance of the actors in a movie. So for cultural and historical significance of the actors in the movie, I actually had to talk about Peanut Butter Falcon, because I really, really, really enjoyed that movie. It's this really interesting retelling of, it's got like an almost Huckleberry Finn aesthetic to it with like
basically it's Huckleberry Finn.
Yeah, exactly, right. It's this really interesting. You got like one guy that's on the run, and then you have somebody who's, I guess they're both on the run in this case, but I really enjoyed it. It was nice to finally have an actor who actually has a given what he had, I believe he had Down syndrome, correct?
Yeah, Down syndrome.
So it's interesting to finally have, and good to have, an actor who actually has Down syndrome playing a character who has Down syndrome, because finally it's the most accurate depiction of that, but also showing that yes, you should definitely look for actors who fit into that category of a movie, because they would give the most accurate description of the character. So I thought, and I'm hoping that it leads to some more openness for Hollywood and for directors to look for actors that more accurately represent things they know less about personally, So yeah, Peanut Butter Falcon I found really, really significant, and I'm hoping there's more from that. And then when it comes to my perception of film, 1917 hit me in a way that I wasn't expecting, because I'm not usually one for historical films, just because of like past issues with like really trying to keep a good clear mind for all the things going on. What I like about 1917 though is, even though there is chaos in it, it is a continuous story. And
literally
yeah, actually the camera does help a lot. besides a few clever cuts here and there and a black screen, it really did well in maintaining that.
Spoiler, David.
Fine, it was during the title sequence. They had a black screen in the title. No, I was just surprised. I'm not used to being that invested in something that's historical, and also it's a really interesting way of showing war in this kind of unsettling, anxiety-filled ride that just keeps on going and going, and ends in a way that you weren't expecting, but with beautiful moments of peace. Well, a beautiful moment of peace.
Yes,
Because it's really only one, I think, besides the ending, and that's iffy. So yeah, I think that one really was significant in my understanding of film and my enjoyment of it.
There was I remember when Honest Trailers did their best picture Honest trailer, and they had 1917, and they're like, this guy is trying to save 2,500 men so they can survive for another 2 weeks.
Holy crap, that's accurate. That's really sad.
Yeah. Also plug in, like, I really wanted to because I'm now in quarantine. So I followed this series called World War II week by week, and the guys who did it, they did starting in 2014, they did a series World War One week by week. So it's like every week they'd be like, "This happened 100 years ago," and I like started it, and I got all the way to basically 1915, 1916, and then like college got in the way.
Oh.
But I might go back because right now they're doing World War II, and they're in 1941 right now. And I've caught up that I'm like waiting for every weekly episode to come out, but I'm like, I need more stuff like this, so I might go back and watch the World War One stuff. But no, I completely agree with you. As I said before, the only thing I wish is I didn't get bombarded with trailers and TV spots.
Yeah.
And I'm glad it didn't affect you. So yeah, I'm gonna do two more. One's a major one, one's a small one.
Mm-hmm.
What's the most overrated movie? And I think you and I very much agree.
Yeah, that's pretty fair. Actually, wait, you know what? Overrated? Shoot. I don't know, because these are the ones that are on my list, and then the ones that aren't are
like overrated to that you believe that your liking of it is, or your dislike of it is so disproportional to how people like it.
Oh, okay. I think for me, probably one of the more overrated ones. Oh, I don't want to say this. I did not enjoy Frozen 2 nearly as much as I thought I was going to.
That would have been one of mine too.
Yeah, right. Because like, well, it was from Frozen, and nobody ever expects a sequel to be like incredible. But at the same time, and thinking more and more about Frozen 2, I just feel bad because it definitely was one of the more overrated ones, despite the songs being fun. I thought they were like very, very fun songs.
Yeah.
With some good range. And then I think another one, and this one might be more iffy, but I don't know. I think that in some cases I could understand why somebody would say that some of the like for instance Murder Mystery on Netflix, right? I thought that one with Adam Sandler, Jennifer Aniston, I think that was on Netflix. I'm blanking if I think that might have been this year.
That was on Netflix.
Yeah, so that one I really thought was gonna be something interesting, and then I got to it and I was like, eh.
But it's also Adam Sandler on Netflix, so it's never gonna be like there's no expectation for it to be good to begin with.
It's true, but then I saw Jennifer Aniston, and then part of my heart was like, my wife. So I thought.
I think your perception of this question is a little bit too personal. Your own overrated expectations.
Here's the issue: any movies that were kind of mediocre or that might have been overblown, I probably just didn't see.
You're missing one though. We talked about this.
What's something that was like really overrated? I mean, Always Be My Maybe for sure.
I liked Always Be My Maybe. I was like, it's perfectly rated in my opinion. I also think Frozen 2 is like is not too overrated just because like there's enough people that like they don't like it. There's enough people that like it. It balances out. There's
I
one
guarantee you, the moment that you say it, I'm gonna think about it. But that might have meant that it was.
you're gonna we talked about this. I brought up this award 2 months ago. And
Dang.
we talked about this, and you forget. I'm gonna say it, and you're gonna kick yourself.
If it's for us, then I'm gonna laugh because it's true.
Yes.
Okay. Well, you know what? That's so accurate, though.
It's Us. Us is a movie in which I think you would agree with this. It's message and Jordan Peele falling in love too much with his concept and storytelling trumped basically any good storytelling and filmmaking by the second half. First half was great in setting tone and setting story. Second half, even especially by the end, this is the one I actually don't like. I don't like. I've seen too many movies and TV shows that do cross editing, and the cross editing for this one didn't really work.
Can you explain the cross editing real quick?
It's when you do something and that it's like something that is semi-related or maybe not even related, maybe thematically related. You try to put it together, right?
I get it.
You know the scene I'm talking about, right?
I'm thinking of the dance fight.
Exactly. Dance fight. There's and I'm gonna in a different topic. We're gonna talk about one that does it very well. But that's just like it's more confusing. Like that scene isn't necessarily executed terribly, but when you look at it in relation to the rest of the movie, you're like, okay, I guess I guess
it also goes against the reveal that comes right after that scene, and so you become even more confused because what you thought they were trying to portray with the dance fight cross editing.
Mm-hmm.
Was completely rearranged and mixed around and made to be nonsensical right after you see the reveal. Then it's like, oh, wait, what? That kind of,
Indeed. We're gonna move on to our last category, and it's basically a major category. What's our top two or three scenes?
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm gonna do this.
Yeah.
So how many do you have?
I have 5.
I have 3 that like absolutely stand out. So name your number 5. Keep on going to your number 4, and then I'll tell you if any of your scenes like cross with mine, and then once you get to number 3, we'll like start like trading off, which I think it will overlap a lot.
Okay.
But so tell me what your number 5. What's your number 5 favorite scene?
Okay, my number 5 favorite scene. This is actually really fun. I'm gonna consider this a sequence scene because it's like it's pretty interesting. But number 5 for me is in Parasite. There's this scene where a character sticks their head over a stairway, and it's a very simple. Actually, it's not even a sequence because those scenes right after that don't matter as much. But it's a very simple scene. With a guy sticking his head right over stairs, and yet to me,
that one. Yes. Okay, yeah. Okay,
and yet, in a weird way, the way it's shot, it's one of the most terrifying scenes I've seen in a movie, and it's like 3 or 4 seconds. But just the way the tone is set, it's honestly the most terrifying thing I've seen in a film.
It's a jump scare without a jump scare.
Exactly. It's in that sense, it's true terror, right? Because it is something
you follow up. You're like, whoa! We're like, it's there, right? That which is kind of what like a jump scare in pure concept should be. That you're like, oh no, right? Like, but like the way like Bong Joon-ho like directs it, it's like you just come across it, you stare at the screen, and then you blink again, and then it comes on you.
Yeah, and in that sense, you fully understand the way a certain character in that film reacts to that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's just a really it's an oddly simple scene, but I really think it's important.
Mm-hmm. What's your number 4?
Yes, number four. So number four for me is fun. It's it's the interrogation scene in Knives Out. Like the early part of the movie where it goes back and forth between all the siblings and stuff like that.
Mm,
Because there's some really
now
funny editing.
that's good cross editing.
That's exactly, isn't it? Because also the dialogue flows, but in the opposite way, right? Where it's this person saying this person says the complete opposite. Sometimes their words completely coincide. What's really cool about it, though, is they don't just have everybody on the same timing. Some people take longer to notice that LeBlanc is in the back, and some people have like more violent reactions, like who the
Ding,
who the blank is that? And it's like,
ding,
who are you? Like
ding.
right? Like in his consistency, he's there, right? But the way the characters react is very different. And I know it's a weird, simple thing, but I think it's a great way to set up the characters and also the slight comedy of the movie. So I really enjoyed that interrogation.
Yeah, that's a great scene. As someone who has done cross editing in some of my personal projects, like the way you do cross editing is it has to feel natural. It has to feel smooth. That they lead into each other. That it's like a continuation of a conversation. Especially that scene, it feels like the conversation is still flowing, even with all these different like scenes that are completely taken out of time.
Yeah.
And no, I completely agree. So we're getting to our top three. I'll say
Yes.
my number three, and you tell me where if this scene is on your top three, where it is, if it is. My third is in 1917.
Okay, nice. Me too. All right, which one is it for you? Because there's two in that movie, but I have an idea of what yours is.
Yeah, for mine's it's so I've told you this before outside of this podcast. You can win me over with a scene with music.
Mm.
And for me, that's a scene is when one of the main characters he like comes out of the water and then he just hears this voice in the distance. And then he just slowly moves closer and the music gets slightly louder and slightly louder and slightly louder until you see soldiers, like a bunch of soldiers gathering around someone who's singing this beautiful, simple song, and it's a nice reprieve in terms of the context of the movie because it just precedes this big action scene, and you, like the character, can take a big deep breath, and like the character, just sit on a tree and just go.
Yeah.
And and just listening to the beauty of it, and also the way that scene pretty much thematically is like the last vestige of civilization and humanity before the most inhumane thing is about to come after.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's my.
I mean, mine is also mine is tied for two scenes. I like that whole scene sequence. But I think also I'm tied for that because it's beautiful. I got the song on Spotify. I loved it. It's such a peaceful, strong song when you listen to the lyrics. It's really this incredible, somber acceptance of death. Knowing that once they pass over the Jordan, they're in heaven, their good peace is waiting. Because on Earth there is nothing of peace left, right? So it's this really beautiful but super sad acceptance of death. And then for cinematography, something that stuck with me from the trailer, still amazed me when I saw it in the movie, this sequence where he's just running towards our camera. There's just bombs going off. He runs like into other soldiers. It just, I don't know why, but the way it's shot, the way that whoever that actor is, they are so good at running. And I know that's weird, but I might have talked with you about this before. I really do. I'm impressed when an actor knows how to make running look real in a movie. So you look like they're really giving everything they have for a physical act. Because otherwise, it's usually a lot of stunt doubles. So it was really cool to see an actor do that. And all the bombs going off, seeing them actually run into soldiers and still keep going, because it's like reality, all lack of bombs and pyrotechnics aside, reality. He bumps into someone, still keeps on going because he has to save a lot of people. it's a beautiful sequence of chaos, which is, I guess, juxtaposed with my other favorite scene in the movie of finally some peace.
Which basically they almost happen almost instantaneously
Yes,
after
exactly.
each other. But what's also like, I told you this before after we watched that movie, like him bumping into the soldiers was completely like it wasn't intended, like, but because they only have X amount of pyrotechnic and X amount of like bombs they can use, that he had to go. I had to go, and I would encourage anyone who's listening to this to go on YouTube, look up 1917 behind the scenes, and they show the behind the scenes. It's cool. It's
Mm.
absolutely cool. In which, like, I'm not gonna give it all away, but how a cameraman is also an extra in that specific scene.
Oh yeah, you did. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So those are, yeah. No, I completely get that. Cool. What's your number two then?
Okay, so this is interesting. My number two is actually the monologue in the lighthouse. With by Incredible Defoe, right? With the black and white, the light is covering. There's light on this part of his face, but the bottom of his face is like black, totally in shadow, right?
That's
And he's
near
giving.
the end of the movie, right? Well,
No, it's when they're in the house together. There's a lantern in the lighthouse, right? And he's talking about Poseidon and a great wrath shall fall on the other character, right? And it's like his face is so contorted in the house that they're in, and he's giving this incredible monologue, this incredible curse of the sea to Pat. What is it, Patterson? I forget the other character.
yeah, Robert
Um,
Pattinson's character.
yeah, and that monologue is just so powerful and terrifying, and it just kind of gave me chills the way that he just kept on going and going in his drunken dialogue. Yeah. Also, I just love black and white and seeing like half, like the top part of his face with light and then the bottom half with black. It was just this beautiful, terrifying sequence.
Yeah, that's the one thing. When people, I think people have a misconception that black and white is quote unquote easier to light. It's actually just as hard, if not arguably harder,
Mm-hmm.
to like, because you have to deal with the literally the different shades between black and white and all the things, all the shades in between to get the desired light effect. You can't just be, oh, let me take this, like this red or this blue and like dial that up. No, you have to get the right combination of blacks and whites, and the way he does the lighting, which you said, like between the eyes, which also
Mm-hmm.
very much relates to what you said before in the scene of Parasite, the way that you put things, how you
Yes.
like things between the eyes. That's yeah, no, I agree. Um, I think my second one is your number one.
Okay. Okay. You're probably right then. Go ahead.
Yes, the play scene at the end of Last Black Man in San Francisco.
Okay. Good stuff. Yes. I mean, yeah. It's freaking beautiful.
It, mm, it's actually it's so good. There's gonna be slight spoilers in this one, but the fact that my mom asked me after the movie is like, or during the movie was like, why didn't Monch just tell Jimmy like before to stop this? It was like, because Jimmy was in the states in which he wouldn't listen.
Yeah.
And this was the only way that that Mont in his mind could see that to he would able to convince Jimmy, and in some ways publicly humiliate him in some ways, but not intentionally, but that's what it basically became.
Of
And
course.
just the way you see how raw, like, it's a playwright that has a good idea, has a great idea, and wants to tackle so many things. And Mont tackles so many things in that, about like the nature of, masculinity, the
Mm-hmm.
nature of social media. But then he like completely derails onto basically a hit piece on his friends by the end, which is basically like the ambition of a playwright. But the way it's done, like a Mont, the character of Mont is raw performance in that, and just you feel him pouring into not just his character, but also just how he just wants to get Jimmy out of this funk.
Yes.
Get Jimmy out of the funk. And he's like, don't you see? You know, it doesn't matter. You're more than this. You're more than this. And he tries to tie in the themes of like, you're more than the box. You're more than what the box dictates and the box labels. Anyways, no, it's a great scene.
It is. Yeah, I mean, I'll talk more about that once I say my number one, which is, you know, that. But I'll talk a bit more about it because it's really genius for a couple more reasons. But my number two is the fight in Marriage Story.
Oh shoot! I forgot that.
do you? Okay, here.
I forgot that.
Do you need like? Do you need 30 seconds for like a reevaluation, or are you still good for your top scenes?
I would probably put it number 4. I'd probably put it number 4.
Okay.
Because I still think the rest are. But no. Continue. Yeah. I can't believe I forgot that. I am so angry at myself. Continue.
So, you know, and that happens sometimes. Things aren't forgettable, but you forget them, and I get it. In the Marriage Story, strikes an interesting place with me. In a weird way, I feel like Marriage Story and The Farewell are kind of tied in the scenes I have for number 2. But I couldn't really choose one over the other, so I just chose Marriage Story. This fight is so visceral. There's something about the way that Adam Driver's voice cracks when he's talking about Henry during this fight scene. Or not scene, like this fight, this dialogue fight. There's this beautiful video on YouTube that I saw like a month or so ago that has the script on one side of the screen.
Yeah.
And then did you see that?
Yeah, it's a screenplay. They also have like face they like do it, and you see how like the actors basically literally just take the words from the page and then pour it into their character.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, that scene already destroyed me when I saw it. When I saw the script, I was so impressed by the actors' ability to throw inflection and character history and chemistry, albeit volatile, into that performance. And when Adam Driver says Henry, there is a voice crack when he's crying. That has to be one of the most realistic portrayals of anger that is so pained that the only way the person could express it is anger, right? Because Adam Driver's character is so confused and lost. They know that there's something they're missing in it, and yet they don't care enough to fully go after it, and yet they also do. There's all these things he's dealing with, and it comes through in this scene. And then Scarlett Johansson's character maintains this interesting point of being extremely angry for reasons that are actually pretty fair for quite a bit of the movie, and even in that fight when she says, spoilers for the next 10 seconds, I'll give people and she's like,
I'll do wave. And then when I stop waving, that means it's okay.
Oh, perfect. So you're so deluded in like selfishness that you don't even recognize it as like selfishness anymore, right? Okay, that was the quote.
That's not that much of a spoil.
No, I know, but also like it kind of gives away like a main argument, right?
Sure.
And she just gives it with like, and then she's like shaking like, it sucks that I have to know you forever. And then it's just this build up, and then he gets so angry and filled with rage that he says something that he knows he doesn't believe. And he starts crying while he says it because he knows he doesn't believe it. But there's the only way he can get all this emotion out is to say it. So he does. Mm-hmm. And immediately Scarlett Johansson's character, because she's such a good actress, holds into this state of like terror at what she heard, but also recognition right after she sees him crying and falling to the ground that he is messed up and she is messed up, and that they have such different goals, and they can't believe they fell for each other in the first place. It's such a painful, beautiful scene.
Yeah, it's just that where she feels that in a weird way, that empathy.
Yeah.
How both of them were made bad choices, as you said. But also, my biggest takeaway from the scene is when Adam Driver says the things. You can see that as soon as he says it, immediately regrets it
Mm-hmm.
as soon as it comes out. And as like you as human beings, you and I have like been through situations where we've seen others or seen ourselves, like we just say things, and when we say, we're like, why did I say that?
Yeah.
Why I was so stupid to see, and to see that ultimate pain and expression, in that, it's just so good. It's
Mm.
so good. We did talk about Marriage Story on an episode a couple episodes ago, so you can
Yes.
watch that for our full segment. But yes, that's your number two, and I am
Mm-hmm.
still upset that I didn't consider this scene in my top three. But my number one is in Parasite.
Oh,
Can
okay.
you guess what scene it is?
Yeah.
Give,
All right. Let's see. Is it The Descent?
no, that's a very good guess. But
I do
no,
love
it's
The
not.
Descent. Let's see. There's a bunch of other ones. Um, is it the sequence of their little, not heist, but to make the maid look awful? That has to be one of the best heist-like things I've ever
No,
seen.
and the thing is, what's so great about it is because I alluded to this about cross editing. It does
Yeah.
such a good job in which you see. So in the same way you talked about when you watch that screenplay video of like, oh, this is what they wrote, and this is how they put their reflection. You see how this family is planning this fam like what they're planning on. They plan it to the T, because they know, because as they said, the wife of the rich family is like simple, right? So
Yeah.
they finish it to a T. They
Mm.
like they plan it to a T, and you see it's like how they're planning versus how they do it, and it's like literally they are literally acting. They're literally acting, and it's so well done. And to cap it all off, which is the reason why I prompted number one, that music is an original classical piece.
Oh. Oh, I didn't know that.
Because like it sounds like a classical piece from like 200-300 years ago,
Yeah.
but it has inspirations from classics of the past, but it's just so like it does it in such a way that's like I can recognize like the classical piece. You have like
Mm.
build up, like a little bit of like low points in the middle, and then it builds up again, and then when it builds up, it's like the last like two measures is so satisfying. It's
Yeah.
the music. It's called, if you guys want to look up, it's called Belt of Faith. That's the piece. It's
Huh.
on Spotify. It's so well done. It's so well done. And it's just like it literally, like I wanted, like watching that, I wanted to stand up. It's like a performance. You're like watching like a concert piece, and you literally just want to stand up and go.
Yeah. Honestly, that would have to be. I would have to tie that with my number two, because that actually is also. I don't know why I didn't think about that scene until you said it, but I was like, wow, that's one of the most enjoyable scenes, because it literally does what I was talking about, Marriage Story, but like in the movie. So I don't have to go through the medium of YouTube for it. It's just in there, plus the little irony that I think you and a couple other people explained to me, where the son is a newer actor and the father is actually an older actor in some Korean films. So it's very funny and ironic seeing the son, who is this new actor,
Directing the old.
like, exactly. There's like a couple layers besides the layer of the actors in a movie acting as actors to get this position. There's also reference backwards to the original actors. So it's actually, dang, that's a really brilliant scene. I probably would have put that somewhere if I remembered that scene. It's really good.
Wow.
With
Indeed.
my number one, which you were correct. You were correct. Was that scene in Last Black Man in San Francisco? It's something beautiful in how upsetting it is, because it's trying to compile a bunch of ideas that Mons himself doesn't fully understand but wants to. Mons is trying to integrate himself into a culture that he knows he's a part of, but doesn't fully feel like he can be seen and identified by that culture in it, right? There's one thing to identify as part of a culture. There's another thing for that culture to accept you as part of its identity. And throughout the movie, Mons is trying to emulate a couple of dudes that hang out at their house throughout the movie, a couple of just guys, and he's trying to emulate their style, the way they talk. He even views them as if they are actors in a play, in a very funny, weird scene, trying to like direct their emotion and stuff, right? And Mont's expression seems to only really come out well through art and through his plays that he creates, because otherwise he cannot seem to conceptualize who he is supposed to be unless through the lens of acting. And so that's beautiful. But then what's really beautiful about that final scene is what that also is trying to say about the nature of identity, what belongs to you, and how sad it is that in a way you're always acting. You know, you are acting, whether it be the role you were assigned as a part of the play or a role that you wish to be a part of, you are acting to fill that role. And what's Mont's friend's name again? The like main
Jimmy.
Jimmy, right? And so Jimmy really wants this to be real. He wants this to be the truth about the house. But he's, in a way, acting as much as the society around him is, right?
Everyone in this movie is acting because they're trying to fulfill perceptions, expectations on them.
Exactly, right? And by themselves.
Exactly.
I think what's beautiful about this scene, which is in itself its own meta commentary on actors and the portrayal of one's cultural role in a movie or play, is that you don't really realize until you think about it how much of you is just trying to fit into a standard. How much of you wants to believe something, and so you act yourself into it. And of course, the beautiful scene of like the head flip really is just, you know, I'm a sucker for dichotomy. If you give me a good dichotomy sequence or idea in a film with really good edits to show the quick cuts, I'm a big fan of it. So it just kind of destroyed me.
The editing reminds me of the scene in The Two Towers where Gollum's having his own monologue.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Which is also clever because Mons isn't just talking to himself, nor is he trying to be two different people in the group of people outside of his house. He's, for the director's sake, representing the internal dialogue, not just of people, but of like a group of people, right? The desire to fight against one's own placement, the desire to fulfill one's placement as defined by the group. It's a beautiful description of how difficult it is to both recognize the past and accept the past as true, or alter it to fill your own identity, and where that puts you in the modern context of like being a black person, a brown person, a minority in a system. I really want to see that sequence again because each time I see it, it is the part of the movie that really just lights me up and connects all the movie. And it, in a way, when I saw the second half of the movie, it made me remember how important the first half is, even if it's a little bit slower. So good.
I would argue that Mont's actually the character that acknowledges, like he knows that everyone's acting and his main purpose is just to observe and try to like imitate, but he's more aware of it, not just because he's just purely actor, but he also, like the scene in the beginning where he says like, oh, why are you drawing that group that like basically trash talked you? And he said, well, just because they're mean to me doesn't mean I can't get something good out of them.
Yeah.
Like just from the observations and like for his own acting, you know, for just to observe, you know, people, to observe culture. Like I think he's much more aware of how he can learn and take things from wherever it comes from.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. And he does that a lot throughout the movie. The sketch pad he holds is the equivalent of, I guess a lot of movies use artifacts of separation. His sketch pad is both his artifact of separation and observation. because through it he can become the third party observer, right?
Indeed.
Um, so yeah, especially when he's like drawing and then the fish hops onto the boat, because that's another case of that. I really like ideas of characters that are like separated so much either by choice or by just their society itself that they have to observe
Yeah,
and
exactly.
process.
So we're gonna go through because we are over time again,
Oh,
as
that's
it always
fine.
happens. But what we're gonna do is because I already stated my top 10, so I'll state it at the end. I'll list my top 10 after you list your top 10, and if you have any thoughts, because we've talked about this and I've stated my opinions. But if you're like, oh, like if you want to talk about a certain movie, or you're like, oh, I haven't heard of this movie or whatever, then like we can talk about it. But for you, go list your top 10 honorable mentions and just keep on talking in as less words as you can about each movie, because I feel some of these movies we've definitely talked about for the
Oh,
last 90 minutes. Um,
nice. Okay,
so
I can start from 10 going down to 1.
yeah, well, if you have any honorable mentions, you can
Oh,
also
I
say
do.
go for
Okay.
it.
So, because of a movie that I love animation for the sake of it, I had to move it up to 10. So, I did have to replace a couple of these, and they were really close. I put The Irishman in my honorable mentions because it's an incredible movie, but it's really hard for me to imagine myself being able to go through it again. So, I love the message, but I can't see myself watching it again. And
Mm.
rewatchability is a big part of my judgment for films. Nightingale is also in my extremely honorable mentions. Again, really liked it. Just doesn't come to mind as much as the other films do. I put The Joker in here just because I had it higher on the list, but I had to move some things around. And I saw it like 6 times, and that kind of messed with my brain. And then Peanut Butter Falcon is tied with for number 10 with the movie Klaus for me because
Even though you said it was forgettable.
so again, I say that in the sense that it's number 10 because I love it. It's just kind of like the movie Tangled for Disney. It just doesn't come to my mind, but when I think about it, I love it. So Klaus is tied with Peanut Butter Falcon for me because Klaus is, by a technological standpoint, for animation, which I'm a big fan of, it is incredible. It takes the animation styling from the Paperman short by Disney for Wreck-It Ralph, and it applies it almost similar to a movie format. Bring back the charm of 2D expressive nature of characters into a modern context. Love it. And Peanut Butter Falcon because it's also significant, but for more so the fact that the actors really pulled that movie through, finally had a character who actually has Down syndrome, playing a character with Down syndrome, super important to me. Number 9 for me is Loose. Loose is a movie that I find to be really interesting in its dialogue. The
Let,
things that,
let, let's expand on it because we haven't really talked about this movie on the
yes.
show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's a movie where it you see what it doesn't really, what I like to say, pick a side. It doesn't make it doesn't show its hand. You can interpret that it leans to one side or other depending on your leanings or how you interpret the movie, but it doesn't have a moment where it says, this is what I want to tell you. But it says, this is one side, this is the other side. And end of movie. Even and you know what who did it by the end, even though they never like really say things. But then they basically say, "Okay, viewer, what do you think about this?" And
Yeah, it's brilliant. I was excited since Justin showed me the trailer, or I saw it with him in theater, and I loved it. It plays into a lot of different facets. Instead of side to side, it's kind of like a six-sided die, all connected, but all still facing different ways. Um, it deals with a very interesting concept of African American to African American
mm,
uh, dialogue and expectation, which is not as often covered in movie as much as white to black identity is. So I really enjoyed that between Octavia Spencer and the main character. He
yeah,
was really interesting, loose, and again, you get to see all these different facets of black culture, white culture, family culture, academic culture, and then the really interesting side plot of dating culture between different groups of people,
Ooh,
which is
this
very
is true. This is
right,
true.
right. So it's loose is really important because there's a lot of subtlety, and technically I did want to put it at a higher place. Um, and it might actually be not number 9 for me. It might actually be like maybe number 7, but I'll figure that out later. Just because my second time through, I was like, there's a couple slow parts in here. So, but that's loose. Really good. Deserves way more discussion. But for the sake of this now, I'll go through it with what I just said. And then at the end, we could talk about it a bit more. Number 8 for me is The Lighthouse, actually. It's not often that I see black and white films, unless I'm watching black and white episodes of Twilight Zone on Netflix. But The Lighthouse is incredible because it does that in a way that maintains color without there being color. Not just by shading, but I mean by the vibrant emotions and the dull sensitivities and emotions of the characters. By the violence, there's this incredibly awful scene. I love it, where there's like a seagull, and and one of the characters isn't too happy about the seagull landing so close to him, so he grabs it, and then it's confetti. So
Did you see the article I posted in our group chat that their people playing Animal Crossing are recreating that scene?
because they're stuck on an island. Oh my goodness. That's freaking brilliant. They're stuck on an island. There's a dumb, awful seagull character with a nice hat. That's brilliant. I love that. The Lighthouse is great. It maintains this sense of you feel like you're going crazy as the movie goes on, because as the movie goes on, the cross editing and the flashbacks, flash forwards, visions, dreams, whatever you want to call them, get more rapid, more frequent, and more odd. And then right, and often disgusting in my understanding of it. But then it's just like, well, I guess that's the whole point of the movie. But then it gets to this really interesting discussion on masculinity, and I'm like, you know what? Tying this all into the movie, this actually has a lot of interesting symbolism, and I get what it's getting at. So yeah, I've really enjoyed The Lighthouse.
Agreed. Continue.
Yes. Number 7 was Avengers Endgame, and I put an E next to this for experience. Avengers Endgame, while some people might say there's some like weird timey-wimey stuff about it, and something about plot development, I gotta say the experience of this movie puts it still on my list for 2019. Loved it. Loved the experience, as I talked about earlier. I did love the closure I felt for a lot of the characters. I think Paul Rudd does a really good job in expressing this extremely complex concoction of confusing emotions when he sees
Dude, that's what my tear fest started.
Honestly, I mean, it's because it's beautiful and sad and
confusion, sadness, happiness, more shock, more confusion, and it's just like, he's able to act in which every single emotion that any person would feel if they were literally like teleported after like 20 years, like would face in that, and just
right.
That's definitely in my like top 15 scenes of the year.
Yeah, yeah, he's got a really good like face of reaction.
Do you know he's 50?
Paul Rudd's 50? He looks so young.
He looks better. Why is it with Hollywood people that they look better when they age than like when they were like 20?
Wow. No, that's true. Paul Rudd did look like kind of greasy when he was 20. How funny.
Oh yeah.
How funny. Avengers was really good. Visually really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of clever dialogue. You know, it was just a very good love letter. Mm-hmm. If at times confusing, but I liked it a lot. Number 6 for me is the Farewell. The Farewell was a super strong reaction for me emotionally. It hit me at a time in my life where I experienced something a month before the movie came out that was very similar to The Farewell. So when I saw it, I was like, wow, this really hits home. Even with like the giving of the eulogy for her grandmother, I was like, oh, I literally just did that a month ago. So the movie is like very accurate in showing how universal death is and how people approach it, but also even more so the fear of death, which is kind of interesting,
Mhm.
and how important it is to keep people in good spirits because death is expected, but the pain of
Mhm.
loss is not so much. Like you'll know it'll happen, but you can't really fully comprehend how painful
Mhm.
loss will be.
Mhm.
So, plus it has this really interesting sense of comedy in it, which I don't know how they maintained, but they did somehow. Uh, Maybe it's like a sense of dark comedy or like uncomfortable comedy where it's like, haha, that kind of.
It yeah, I agree. It's kind of like what I like to dub real life comedy. I feel like it's like things that you and I in this situation would race up just to get a couple chuckles.
Yeah.
Like that's like the comedy it is. But also getting to your spoiler for the end of the movie. Lulu Wang, the director, this was 2.5 months ago. Like basically his grandmother now knows. Her grandmother knows.
Wait, what? How?
Well, because the movie's out, and basically one of her friends like, "Oh, there's this movie that's coming." So basically, someone asked, like Lulu Wang was like in her interview, she's like, "Yeah, my grandmother knows. We haven't talked yet." And I assume that they have during this time, or maybe no, because January was like when the coronavirus started in China, so probably not. But
Hmm.
so that's a. I guess we'll see a sequel.
Apparently, if the
uh,
credits showed anything, it's that she is still around. So,
yeah.
uh, right
What's your
above
number?
Farewell, yeah, right above
Yeah.
Farewell is LBM, Last Black Man in San Francisco. Incredible last scene. Again, my second time through did make me rethink, I guess, my feelings about not the first half, but the first third. Just because there's like, no, actually, it's more like maybe the second of all the thirds, because the first third was pretty nice. You get all the build up, all the characters, all the dialogue, pretty interesting stuff. And then Act Two is just like, okay, it's slowing down once they actually get into spoilers. Once they get into the house, sometimes things slow down a bit. And towards the end, when it gets towards Act Three of that, where things start to really ramp up in a way that I really like because it's pretty satisfying,
Mhm.
if depressing at times. But yeah, I talked about Last Black Man in San Francisco's final scene, and it's a good summary and also good point of direction for discussing the topics of the movie and film for people who might have had some difficulty in the first two acts, right?
Mhm.
Trying to like synthesize it, and it's really beautiful, very interesting, and it gives an ending that, while not satisfying, does what it's aiming to do, which is to not be satisfying. Because if it were satisfying, then I think that would defeat the point. Uh, so yeah, I really like Last Black Man in San Francisco.
Mhm.
Um, Surprisingly good movie.
Mhm.
Uh, Number four, this was actually far more surprising to me though. Never thought I'd have a Netflix film on a top 10 movie thing, but
I
Marriage
think
Story. Yeah, right. I mean, who would have guessed a Netflix original? For me, at least, I never expected Netflix to be like a producer of good movies as much as it is a
Mhm.
nice like directory. But Marriage Story was incredible. Love the actors. I've loved Scarlett Johansson for such a long time, and then Adam Driver, a bit more new to the scene for me, but he's also incredible. Really good at showing rage, which we know from the Star Wars films is probably something that really drives those movies. He's really good at like showing
more, more.
more. Let's get this marriage out of the sky. So he's like Adam Driver is incredible. The actor for the kid I actually like, which is kind of interesting.
Mhm.
There's like some really good scenes of Adam Driver just kind of playing with his little fake knife, where I was like, wow, that got really dark really quickly. Um, the nature of being a director and being an actress and how that interacts in a relationship kind of provide some interesting power dynamics that also, in a way, both represents and through the movie tries to fight against the roles in a relationship by like modern patriarchal standards of like a man and a woman. So really interesting dialogue between the lawyers. I actually find the lawyers to be really interesting, slimy characters.
Oh, they're
Uh,
They're terribly slimy.
They make the divorce so much worse than it has to be.
Mm-hmm.
Which I kind of like for the sake of drama, but it's also very accurate.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen stuff like that, and I have to say that lawyers can overcomplicate things and force you to drag things out of the depths that you wouldn't have needed to do so if it was just the two of you learning as adults. So again, it felt accurate, great acting, and just like good characters. I liked it a lot.
Indeed.
Right? Kind of beautiful.
So I'm trying to, before we move on, let me just try to think. I know what your number one is.
Yes, you do.
I'm trying to think what your other two are.
It's
I
been
think
a lot
I know.
around, dude. I mean, this list was actually
Okay, there's three movies that I can see that are in your number in the 2 and 3 spot. Okay. So let me play the guessing game. Let me play the guessing game. And don't tell me if this is number 2.
Exactly.
But your number 3 is 1917.
Do you want me to say yes or no?
Yes.
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 That was impressive, actually. I didn't expect you to get that. Because you know that I love that film. But I was just like, I wonder if he'll figure out how much I love it. Which really makes number 2 interesting.
I think I know. I'll guess your number 2 after the fact, but continue, please.
Okay. 1917. It's up here so high because it's just surprising how much I like it. Again, it's rare for a historical film to capture me as much as this one does. It's rare for me to ever see a film that does something about cameras that I never really think about, and like long takes. It's rare for me to also enjoy characters this much and their dialogue and their fear and the fact that they're running a lot of like horrifying imagery of war, gross, disgusting imagery, just general violence and the unfairness of it all, right? But that's kind of the whole point. It's just a violent mess. And I like that. I like the music. I like the soundtrack's really beautiful, very sad and somber, but very beautiful. And of course, that sequence in the forest drives it home for me, along with following right after that beautiful sequence of peace for the wayfaring soldier. We have that scene of him running through the field, bumping into people, running. It's so scary and terrifying. You see people falling next to him like the whole entire time, and it's just incredible. And then, Doctor Strange makes an appearance. It's just a good film. No, I really did love 1917. And I talked about it before, but it's just high action for something that I never really thought about much. World War I, that is.
Yeah, for sure. Your number 2 is Jojo Rabbit?
No,
get up. Knives Out.
There we go. Nice.
There you go.
Yes, I actually forgot to read Jojo Rabbit's supposed to be on my honorable mention. Jojo Rabbit. Yes, number 2 is actually Knives Out. Knives Out was so interesting, but I think the second time through is when I really appreciated the presence of Knives Out in a year where I didn't have that many I don't want to say enjoyable films, but films that made me feel kind of okay at the end of them. It was kind of a rough year because all the films that came out were like really beautiful films, but they almost always made you feel like trash at the end. And finally, when Knives Out came out, I was like, this is a good movie that's enjoyable, interesting, kind of drags you here and there between where you think the story is going to go, since it goes through the normal story in the first 20 minutes. LeBlanc is just such a fun character they've created.
Daniel Craig is having so much fun.
They go with the whole entire Savannah kind of accent for him, and it's very nice and slow molasses style. He does that whole thing where he's just trying to get the nice low draw, and I love that.
I do say I do,
I,
I do say.
I did not know who dropped that money
Uh,
on my doorstep.
Also, I recommend everyone watch Daniel Craig's most recent episode on SNL because you can see how much fun he's having. He also there's one skit where there's like a movie quotes, like a movie quotes where it's like a bunch of people are like having a competition about like movie quotes, and they're like name a quote and then like have someone say it, and then like you have the two people including Daniel Craig they're like just like so niche. Everyone's like, how do you know this is from Captain Phillips just by listing two words? And you
That's
see
actually really fun.
it's like that would be you, and me.
Yeah, of course, right?
But it's a lot of fun. But Daniel Craig is like I appreciate him much more because my perception of Daniel Craig is just like he's Bond, he's boring. But he's just when like his comedic roles are literally like just he's you can feel he's like, oh man, give me more, let's do
Yeah.
this, let's go with it. So
Yeah, for sure. He definitely excels in that. I think that's one of the reasons when I saw the movie, I was like, when I first saw the trailer, because I just thought of James Bond, right? But then as I saw the movie, I was like, oh, this is great. Ana de Armas is incredible. I really liked her character. There's a scene towards the early part of the movie where she's getting so nervous, and the actress, and for the sake of her character, is just like her voice is cracking. She's crying. She's trying so hard to like find the right medicine or see if she made a mistake and stuff like that. Which is so incredible because she has so much confidence playing Go with the character, and it's just she's incredible throughout the whole movie. There's a lot of fun little quirkiness about it that's so like Clue inspired. The house has this really cool aesthetic of Clue, like secret doors and cool carpets and fun, slightly gothic aesthetic, right? And all the characters are just slightly interesting or wacky, or they have their own little vices and sins. And
yeah.
then the movie, in this incredible mini twist, takes a mug and kind of develops this idea with one shot at the beginning of a mug that says "My house, my rules," or "My mug, my house, my rules," and it presents at the beginning and then at the end. Spoilers for everybody for the end, but it's really important for my experience of the movie. Ana de Armas is the one that gets this mug at the end of the movie, and she's standing on a balcony with it. And then she's looking down at the white family that could never figure out what country she was actually from. They just would throw out like random Central American countries and saying like, "Oh,
and
she's from Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Ecuador, Argentina." They're just like throwing out random stuff,
and,
right?
and then Fox News goes crazy.
Of course, right? They're like, this movie it just is so logical. It's because this movie presents an interesting idea of the whole idea of an immigrant earning their place in society, right? And then it shows the hilarious irony of because in the movie they actually have political discussions by the fireplace about this, like earning your way as a citizen, earning your way into success, right? And in the movie, she's the only one who earns anything as a nurse who actually cares about the grandfather. Then at the end of the movie, they all are so angry at her because she's the only one that actually like earned stuff through her kindness and through her through being a good nurse, while the other ones earned it through inheritance.
It's one of those movies that like in the 20 or 30 years you're gonna be in the film history class and you can be like, what movie like portrays perfectly, you know like the late 2010s, early 2020s. And while some people would say like this movie is like too political, which I don't agree with, but it's one of those things where it's like it perfectly does ride that balance of like this is like modern day. It places itself so in 2019, but
Mm,
without being way too making it overshadow the story.
exactly. It's like a nice cherry on top. It's something that kind of, as a theme, unifies it, but does not draw you out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Especially since they use the political discussion for comedy in some parts of the movie, but they also never say like Trump Trump good, Trump bad.
Orange man bad.
They never say like Trump say kofefe, haha. You know, they never stoop low. They just they just talk about it back and forth between the family. And even though they're all talking about it, it goes into the doesn't matter for the ones that are Democrats and Republicans because they're all rich. And so it's like,
yeah, they're all terrible people.
Exactly, right? Which is
regardless of affiliation.
That's why I love. That's why I have my number one. Actually, the whole idea of just terrible people. Parasite. I mean, I love Parasite. I really do think that it deserved all those awards it got. I think it's a great marker for people finally being a bit more accepting of Asian films, and non-American films that aren't just British coming into America, right? Because Americans are like, we don't need subtitles for British films, so like things that are in the most American sense of the term foreign. And I think it's a great marker for that. I think it's an incredible movie to start that off. I love the things I disliked about the movie Us are the things I loved about this movie. The movie Us does not integrate. Like, you're talking about what? A symbolism.
It does the stairwell better.
Exactly. And because it's not just like the simple, like, 30-second sequence from Us that doesn't as much drive it home because there's a lot of like horizontal hallways in it. Technically, it does this like constant progression, and it's not just like the descent, but the accumulation of water, which is a beautiful sequence, and also with some like minor biblical references because water also equals death sometimes in a lot of like books and biblical context, and like it's a clever symbol because water is just a very dangerous thing in larger amounts, right? It's just a symbol of death. And so as the water accumulates in small amounts, it's healthy. In large amounts, it's deadly. And you see this accumulation for the poor. You see this beautiful, simple symbolism. You see a good cross-cutting between like bathroom at the top, the exploding toilet at the bottom, the significance of the toilet having to be raised so it's above the sewage line, versus the wonderful house on the hill, right?
You blew my mind when you brought it up.
My mom is the one that told me.
Yeah,
because she lived in a not so good place, right? And so she's like, this is actually very accurate for how the sewage line is developed in places that are below because they can't afford it. And I was like, wow, I didn't realize. I thought it was just a weird architectural thing. And she said, no, it's just how they have to organize it for like very low income neighborhoods. And so there's this realism. There's this incredible like early movie Morse code flickering of the lights during that flooding scene without ever mentioning it. There's a cool discussion of the hollow rock as it floats in water, instead of actually sinking in the water. There's so many interesting symbols, but they don't take away from the movie or distract you. Just the more you understand them, the more the movie is like kind of coming together, right? And in the case of where it's like you can understand the symbols of Us pretty well, but then the more you understand the symbols, in a weird way, it kind of detracts from the story and the plot and the logic of the plot. So yeah, Parasite was really interesting. I love that sequence so much. Great music. It's so fun seeing the family like practice the lines, and in the background of that scene, the sister and the mother, even though it's not their lines, you can see them reciting it with their mouths, and it's just a funny little thing because it's like, wow, they've practiced this so much that even the people whose lines it isn't delivered to, they know it. They're like mouthing the words and stuff. All these things I learned about the difference between like American progressive culture with like PC stuff. I was like, wow, this is interesting to see how in other countries, that's not as much of a focus, a concern, or a directive. So educational, intriguing, both culturally specific and in a weird way, kind of I don't want to say universal, but relatable and understandable in a universal context.
Yeah. It also it makes you question the term parasite to the very end of the movie. Like you're like, oh, what does parasite mean? Oh, it's the poor it's these people trying to exploit the rich family. Oh, it's maybe like these other people. Oh, it's maybe the rich family. Like you go back and forth like so many times.
Mhm.
But yeah, no, it's great. Our friend Alex, actually, I was following. He just messaged me. He just finished watching it. Like literally, he just finished watching it.
Oh my goodness, that's great. Oh, I want to see his reaction to that.
His reaction after watching was, "Okay, eat the rich."
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Oh well, look at that. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, but no, it's a great list. Now I'm gonna give you my top 10, and
Yes,
you're gonna hate me for these placements, but I'm just gonna go through this.
do it.
Number 10 is just actually okay. Honorable mentions, in descending order from number 15. Ford versus Ferrari, uh, great, just a great classic Hollywood movie. Joker, Jojo Rabbit, Little Women, which I really hate for not putting in my top 10,
Oh.
but I like ha- I hate, but like Little Women's like there's certain parts that are just objectively like confusing,
Mm-hmm.
like by the ending that I was like I just cannot justify like logically. But and then my last one is Klaus. My
Fair
for
enough.
honorable mention, and then number 10 is Just Mercy, even though it is the most Oscar baited movie ever. Like in concept, it is one of the best movies in terms of executing it beyond its Oscar baitiness.
That's impressive.
Like it's, and then you get me crying when you play the old rugged cross as one of the characters is going to like is meeting his maker basically, and I'm like
Oh.
just crying. But it does a good job. Like, and we talked about this. Just Mercy is the
Mhm.
perfect companion piece to another movie called Clemency, which Clemency is
Yes.
basically it's conclude. So both movies are about the death penalty. Clemency's conclusion is basically we're all effed because the system is so in place, and even beyond just white versus black, like all people of race and creeds are already tied into it. They're also like tied in like in like places of power where like people of color are also now like implemented
Mm.
in. um but I think Just Mercy, which also has the virtue of being based on a true story, uh, does say yes, it sucks, but it gives you that like Mr. Smith Goes to Washington type of hope,
Yeah.
where it's like if a person can just keep on trying, they like justice will be like just the day of judgment and the day of justice and the day of mercy will come.
Mm.
Um, Despite everything. And I think both movies are good to serve as a balance, but in terms of Just Mercy as a movie, it does a really good job in providing its message in in stating its message and also making you feel about the character. So a lot of these Oscar movies are just like message, 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 message. But it does a good job in investing in characters, and it does a good job in doing some very interesting things, including like how people in like the coastal cities are so disconnected with people in rural areas. So you have this like Michael B. Jordan's character as a lawyer goes down south, and he kind of has this feeling that he can like fix everything, but then he realizes he can, and then but he's also has a really good heart, and he like adapts to it. He adapts to challenges. He adapts to he will do anything for his client, and that's the one thing that's so admirable about his character. Which is so weird because I thought this movie would get Oscars because it's literally so Oscar baity, but it was so Oscar baity, it didn't get any Oscars.
It's cycled back on itself.
Yeah. My number 9 is
Oh, here.
Loose.
Wait 1 second. Oh, that's funny of mine too. No, I'm gonna go to the bathroom. I'll be right back. I will be right back. Sorry.
Okay, go run.
Yeah.
So I am going to um, while David is going, I'm going to try to attempt to keep myself and you and yours truly entertained. As I'm staring through my letterbox, seeing all the movies, I guess I'll talk about some other movies that came up. Um, there's this movie back in March that came out March 2019 called Gloria Bell. If I had to say, if this movie, a movie that was so close to being perfect. That would be it. It stars Julianne Moore, in which she's a middle-aged woman who is trying to find love, and it does a good job of doing like portraying, middle-aged people because Hollywood is ageist, and just seeing like her character go through like middle-aged romance, and not just middle-aged romance, but also like the challenges that come with it. The problem is that movie was so perfect the first 2/3 that there's a certain plot point in the third act that just derails everything, and once it wants to switch to a different plot point, then like the previous plot point was not resolved perfectly. That I'm just like, by the time it gets to the conclusion, which I do think it's a really good conclusion, like it's on the tracks. Like if it's a train, it derails by the third act. Hello. I was telling the audience about a movie that was almost perfect. It was by the name of Gloria Bell. It's a movie about middle-aged woman played by Julianne Moore, who looking for love as a middle-aged woman, and it's great because Hollywood is ageist, so it's nice to have something about middle-aged women and like all the things that come with it. I was saying that the first 2/3 are perfect, then it derails at the beginning of the third act, that by the time it finally tries to correct itself, that the previous plot point was like, in my opinion, almost unforgivable. That I was just like, you went from being perfect, literally perfect in my opinion, to just being like, it's still good, it's really good, and I can almost say it's great, but like you were so close. We're this close.
Dang.
This close to greatness. But yeah, I was just keeping the audience entertained. But yes, go back to my top 10. Loose for all the reasons that you said. My number 8 is The Two Popes on Netflix.
Yeah, I have to see that.
Yeah, which we've talked about, and yeah. I talked about in the last podcast, just the way it does a good job at not pandering to, like, it does a good job of giving enough for Christian audience or Catholic audiences that they can catch up.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I hate to use this word, but for people who like don't like know what we're talking about, it's like it's like fan service. I hate to use that. I hate to use that, but that's basically, in terms of like film functionality, that is basically what it is.
Yeah.
But it does a good job at balancing, like, basically for religious audience and non-religious audience, and it really portrays like this friendship between Pope Benedict and the future Pope Francis, and also dealing with what was going on in the church. It doesn't avoid what was going on in the church, the sex abuse cases, but it deals with something so fundamental by the 2/3 mark, where it talks about, it's like what you and I have talked about for the movie Silence. It's like my favorite like movies are basically gives you a dilemma where it's like, what do you do at times of crisis? And how does your how does your faith dictate it, and are you able to keep on, like, hold on to your faith? And how do these things haunt you after the fact? And it's so well done. It's like that, like the 2/3, like after the 2/3 mark, it's like, whoa, we are like going there. We're going there, and it's good. It's a really good movie. I don't think the cinematography is that good. I question the cinematography, but the story is so good. And it's good. Except I don't agree that Anthony Hopkins should have been nominated for Best Supporting Actor, because Pope Benedict had a German accent, and Anthony Hopkins is just have a straight up British accent.
It's like the dark comedy Russian movie. Just have the actors do whatever the heck they want.
Yeah, Death of Stalin.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, what's his name? Whoever played Pope Francis has the spot on Argentinian accent. Spot on Argentinian accent. Like that, people are like, oh, like I can completely like see like Pope Francis in this, and then I look at Anthony Hopkins, it's like, you're good, but you're not Oscar worthy. I'm sorry, but yeah, there's that. Number 7, The Lighthouse. It's crazy. Number 6 is Parasite, only because, and I know you're hate this, and we talked about this, because it's two things: the tears and music is usually the two things that usually put things over my others. And in terms of Parasite, there's a lot of great scenes, but like these other movies like just personally impacted me so much more. Like objectively, if Parasite for you, Parasite's number one. I cannot disagree with it. I will not fight you on it.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
get it. Just don't kill me for saying something that's controversial. Number 5, Marriage Story. Love it.
Nice.
Number 4, Avengers Endgame, because I can't stop crying. Number 3, One Child Nation, because I screamed out of the movie theater, and it might have been my number 1 if it wasn't for the fact that its ending message didn't really land. It was only 2 sentences. It's 2 sentences. Where it compares. This is the part where I'm going to get crucified 20 years from now when I run for like some big position. I don't know. But basically, they try to compare the American reproductive rights to Chinese reproductive rights. And the thing is, there's actually here's the thing. She's like, like ironically, like the right, like the. Like basically like in America we can't like have the right to abortion, like it's also weirdly like just as authoritarian or whatever, right? My problem with it is like whatever your belief on abortion is, I think the better way to frame it is the way America's reproductive rights, like just in general. For example, like contraception, birth control, condoms are like a better way in which in my opinion, your argument is better when you just put the entire umbrella of American reproductive rights and birth control.
Yeah.
But when you focus on abortion so specifically, I think in my opinion, you lose the nuance. But that's just because I have certain opinions.
Yeah.
That, but that's just me. That's just that like one thing where it's like you just jumped out of it. Like you jumped out of it, and for other people who are, I get it, you're pro-life, then you might be like, oh, cool, I agree. But that's for me, like, why it's, like, not number 1, because it just came out of nowhere for me. This is going to kill me in 20 years. Number 2 is Last Black Man in San Francisco.
That makes sense.
Which is because the music is so good. That soundtrack I listen to so many times on Spotify. It's not even funny. Good. But also, I think one of the things I love about these... I think Last Black Man in San Francisco did the thing for me that some other movies about the Black experience don't do. It's just it tells a story without making you feel like putting you in the box of like the Hollywood Black experience.
Yeah, nice.
So that you care for them as people first, and then you can extrapolate from them the bigger themes.
Mm-hmm.
The bigger themes of race, of classism, like all these things. You extrapolate from it. You extrapolate from the bottom up instead of going, big themes, right? So, that's just that was for me. Even it's my favorite, and my number 1 is The Farewell.
Yeah.
As a Chinese American, this really does hit home, even though it doesn't, as I've told you before, like as I said on the podcast we recorded on this a while back, it doesn't directly impact on me, but I've seen so many people that have gone through this. And just the little nuances I also see in my extended family and other like just like other like people, my friends and family back in Taiwan, my friends from my church, which are all from Chinese. It's just the little things they do well, and they also do such a good job in explaining the Chinese mentality and how and just why people would think this, and they do it very like in a very balanced way, in ways that they don't go Western ideology is better,
Yeah. It's different. It's different. I like that scene. It's different.
We talked about this, right? The what was it? How they wanted to Disneyfy it.
That would have been awful.
White boyfriend. Oh, so this is China.
I would have literally hated if it was just 50% of the movie was white guy just saying like whoa or what or in America we don't have like
Yeah.
and at the end of the movie though he would be like, you know what, we're not so different, you and I
I
would
was
be
like,
so angry.
hello, and how do you say it? Nay, 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 nay. Okay, all right.
What's your name again? No, 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 no.
My favorite scene in that movie is where the mom talks about like the Chinese idealism of America,
Yes.
but also how just this small 2 sentence interjection by what was it? Aquafina's character is like, no, in America we have problems. We have guns. We have gun problems, like economic problems. That was like exactly what I would say.
Yeah.
Like we have problems in America. It's not just this like rose colored like ideology. But no, that's my thing. Jeez, we are way over time. Let's get to your bottom five or
Yeah.
however.
Well, I talked about them a bit, but my bottom five are kind of interesting. So, like, okay. So, my number five worst, like the actual worst for me, would have to be The Rise of Skywalker. And I say that because there's one thing for something to be like Cats where I expect it to be bad. But when you have something that you put so much money into that looks visually really interesting, and then you just completely drop the ball, it's more of a painful thing to watch.
Sure.
And then there's just so many different plot holes that get me really upset
Mm-hmm.
and that feel kind of pointless. And I'm like, you know what? Didn't have to do that.
Watch the episode we released back in January where we go into a 1 hour diatribe about it.
Yeah, it
Anyways,
sucks. So
anyways.
yeah, that's like my actual worst personally. And then number four, uh, number four is
Wait, so number five is your worst. So this is your
yes,
worst.
yes. That's
Okay,
my
okay,
yeah, exactly. Like I'm going from like actual worst to like
gotcha.
eh.
Okay, sure.
So that's there. I feel like number well, I don't say my number one yet. I think that okay. Did you see Doctor Sleep? Okay. So Doctor Sleep wasn't awful. It was actually pretty
Wait,
interesting.
you put Doctor Sleep in there?
Well, it's okay. It's not the worst. It's actually like it's just like it got really confusing for
You
me.
put Doctor Sleep?
Okay, no, I thought it was interesting, but it was so confusing to me when I was seeing it, and I also fell asleep twice in it.
Oh my
So to be
god.
honest, I don't remember the plot because I fell
Oh
asleep.
my gosh. Okay, you've actually upset me now. Can't
Here,
be friends.
the day that I actually watch it, I'll because I fell asleep twice in it. Not because of the movie, it's just because I didn't drink any coffee beforehand. The day when I actually watch it, here, my actual number four would be probably Frozen 2, just because I was really hoping for it to be something, and it just was like, eh.
Sure.
It didn't really follow through with anything. Uh,
Okay.
my number three is always Be My Maybe, because it was cute, but
Hmm.
I'm also I've gotten to the point where I'm kind of sick of like romance movies in that fashion in general.
Sure. Sure.
Um, so I thought it was enjoyable because I saw Keanu Reeves in there, and he's just funny in his existence. His existence is just kind of funny. I don't know. It's just like, it's Keanu Reeves being himself and literally nothing else. Yeah,
Okay.
I love that. And then number two would be Us.
Okay. Right.
It just really, kind of upset me because it could have been good like Get Out, but it just kind of failed to tie all together. And number one, as in like the best of the worst, the closest to
Sure. Okay.
would have to be Cats, because it's such like a vile, putrid mess. And yet, to be honest, I have seen it like 2.5 times now, and it's so like
When did you watch it the second time?
what?
When did you watch it the second time?
Oh, I saw bleep this out. I saw it illegally online. But yeah, I thought it was very weird, and I disliked it even more the second time around. But I was able to rag on it more the second time around, and I was like, wow, this really is just kind of weird. But I also enjoyed a bit of the music here and there, and I was like, okay, I experienced a part of culture I never thought I would. So, for the sake of
Yeah.
that,
Mhm.
it's an experience just like a
Mhm.
pandemic. It's an experience that you never expect yourself to like live through, but you do. Um,
Yeah, I remember when someone commented on my bottom five. It was like I can't believe you actually like paid to see Cats. In which I commented, I paid for an experience. I
yeah,
definitely got that.
that's
uh, so for my bottom five, which okay, so commenting on yours, I think it also comes to the point that like I think for the movies that you've seen, I think like you usually see pretty good movies
mhm.
and then mediocre ones, and not really that many truly bad movies.
Oh
Like,
yeah, I usually
yeah.
avoid them.
So my thing is, I'm trying to. So my thing as a movie, like I'm trying to watch more indie movies. My next stage is trying to watch all movies, no matter how bad they are. Uh, so I
Wow.
can truly like the thing is my as a filmmaker, I can truly like distinguish between the good, the bad, and the ugly. Like I want to
Ah,
get to that point. In which case, hopefully, I'll be paid by then to
nice.
watch all of it. But here's my bottom five. So from 57 to 61, uh, what made it out of my bottom five was Judy, Tolkien, and Glass. Glass barely made it out of the cut.
Wow.
I really did not like Glass. I
Yeah.
really it's pretentious. It's like and I
Mhm.
shout like, "Hey, I'm gonna have a lecture and about superheroes and like I'm gonna sound very smart." And then you as the viewer like, I know this. I've
Yeah.
already known this because times have changed, sir. Uh, and then Will Smith doing okay, but there's certain scenes where he literally doesn't look like he's trying. There's
Yeah.
one time where he's like, remember, like I forgot, was it like he was like getting like rolled around, and you just see that was Bruce Willis's face, and he's like just like,
This man's
uh,
unbreakable. He doesn't care.
so okay, number 57 is so I've seen 61 movies, and from 57 down to my last one. 57 is The Good Liar, which we talked about this
Oh
off camera.
yeah.
You need to watch it just because the plot twists are absolutely ridiculous.
I like
The
sure, but
plot
it just
twist,
sounds like it's awful.
but that's also why it's like you have to see it to believe it. You literally have to
That's
see it to
true.
believe. And what's upsetting is that people after watching it in my theater actually thought it was genius. Uh,
That's funny.
uh, so yeah, the only thing that's a saving grace is the acting is actually good, but
Okay.
uh, but it's like I feel so bad. It's like Helen Mirren and McKellen trying in a
Mm,
terrible movie. My number 58, Godzilla King of the Monsters,
didn't
because
see it.
it's abs. Some might say it as a guilty pleasure. I get it. In some ways, it is for me just because I see Boston getting demolished. I'm like, yay, Boston demolished. But as like when my parents are like questioning basic logic,
hmm.
this is bad.
Parents never do that. That's actually really bad. That means they got taken out of the movie like early on.
Yeah, they got taken out of the movie. It's so like it's so the movie is so stereo like it's such a prototypical Hollywood movie, but it also stumbles along its prototypical proverbial railroad. Like it's like
Wow.
oops. Like it's oh my gosh. It's so bad. It's like it's really bad, but it's still enjoyably bad, I would say.
Hmm.
Uh my number 59 is because I think mediocre. I am very salty at this. How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World.
Oh, I totally forgot about that. That
Did you
was
see?
super. I did. That was super forgettable.
Oh, you did see it. We never talked about it
Oh yeah. I'm sorry. I mean, like animation wise, right on. But it's so forgettable. I literally forgot about it.
because I told you. Remember when I saw that movie? I was like, if you took the second movie copied and pasted the plot and then deleted all the emotional beats.
Yeah, that's accurate. That's accurate.
And then like, because it's literally the same plot. I'm not
Yeah.
joking. It's the same plot minus the ending.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then they even, in my opinion, like if they could have gone full Pixar with the ending, like made it more nuanced. So spoiler for the end. Like they could have just like had the shadow of Hiccup, and you see the shadow of Hiccup, and then it disappears. But no, they have to do the reuniting scene. I'm like, that's
Exactly.
that was like the last straw for me. That was the last straw for me. I was like, you can't even deliver the ending that is literally right in front of you.
Exactly.
It's right in front of you. Anyways,
it was very forgettable. That's actually upsetting. I totally forgot about it.
It could have been better. That's also my thing. Number 60, Rise of Skywalker, as we talked about before, and number 61. And it's also partially because like I also like for the worst movie of the year, I feel like it also has to be like enjoy. I also reserve for like so bad that's also enjoyably bad to like a different degree. So that's Cats.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, but yeah, that's. I'm glad we got through this. And again, we went through a Rise of Skywalker runtime again for this episode.
Hey, look at that.
Yeah, but yeah, we got through 2019.
Wow. Let's see if we can actually make it through 2020 after the first 3 freaking months.
There was a meme where it's like, oh man, I can't believe like the first 3 months suck. April, and it's a Star Destroyer hovering over.
I saw that, but for like random scenes from the movie The Mist with the giant insects in the mist.
No.
And I was like, boy, oh boy, April sure does sound like fun.
Yeah, so you're gonna kill your family by accident. That's what's
gonna
happen.
And then like 10 seconds later, I'm gonna have my salvation, only to realize, oh man, if I just waited 10 seconds, they'd be fine.
And do the no, and then. Anyways, glad we made it through, and again, it is wonderful talking to you.
It's nice talking to you too, bud.
And we will do this. Thank you. Is there a way I can do that to you? There we go.
There it is. Hey, yeah.
This is great. Survive quarantine, my friend.
Yes,
and maybe this means that we can do this more often, but I guess we gotta find other things to talk about. So, but yeah, well, thank you for all you viewers out there who are listening to our podcast. It's a treat for you to join us and listen to our own madness and stupidity. And stay safe out there.
Yes.
Don't be a spring breaker. Stay at home. Stay at home. And we will see you on the next episode of the First Rate Podcast.
Yes.
And